The black woman's husband signed the divorce papers with his mistress by his side, and the judge made them regret it. The cold air in the courtroom seemed to freeze even the soul. But what really made Jasmine's blood boil was the victorious smile on the blonde mistress's face, who fanned herself as if she were watching a show at the theater. Her husband, Robert, with a gold pen between his fingers, hesitated for only a fraction of a second before signing the divorce papers, glancing approvingly at the woman sitting behind him. Finally free of this complicated situation, Jessica, the mistress, murmured loudly enough for everyone to hear, adjusting her platinum hair with a theatrical gesture. Now Robert can have the kind of life he always deserved with someone more suitable. What they didn't realize was that Judge Martinez, a man of Latin American descent with over 30 years of experience, had witnessed similar scenes too many times and was about to turn that premature celebration into the worst nightmare they could imagine. Jasmine Williams was only 34 when she discovered that her 12-year marriage was a carefully constructed lie. With a degree in business administration, she had sacrificed career opportunities to support Robert's entrepreneurial dreams, genuinely believing they were building something together. Her savings, dedication, and trust had been used as fuel for his success, and apparently to finance his affair with a secretary who always treated her with thinly veiled condescension. In recent months, the clues had been piling up like bricks in a wall, Robert arriving late with increasingly elaborate excuses, the sweet perfume that clung to his shirts, and his impatience when she tried to talk about their future. The final blow came when Jessica, at a company party, made a point of commenting too loudly, "Wow, Robert, your wife has such a natural tan. It must be genetic, right?" The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself, but the systematic humiliation. Jessica made a point of posting photos at Jasmine's favorite restaurants, wearing jewelry that Jasmine recognized as gifts Robert once said he couldn't afford. It was a deliberate campaign of erasure, as if Jessica wanted to prove that a woman like Jasmine should never have occupied that space in the life of a successful man. For months, Jasmine pretended not to notice the pitying looks from neighbors, the whispers that stopped when she arrived at gatherings, the way former friends avoided her eyes. It was as if she had become invisible in her own life, an inconvenient shadow to be delicately removed. But while they celebrated their supposed victory, calculating how to divide the assets most advantageously for Robert, Jasmine maintained an expression of resignation that hid something much more powerful. Her eyes, shining with silent determination, held secrets that would transform the charade of a consensual hearing into something completely different. Robert's lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who treated Jasmine as if she were furniture to be moved, pushed the papers toward her. "Your turn to sign so we can finally end the situation in a civilized manner." Jasmine held the pen, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. For a moment, she let them believe they had won completely. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the sound of Robert's pen tapping impatiently on the table. If you've ever tasted the bitter taste of betrayal and humiliation, you know the sweetest revenge comes not from anger, but from intelligence. Subscribe to the channel because what happened in the next few minutes proved that underestimating a wounded woman, especially one who has learned to play the game better than her own tormentors, can be the most costly mistake of anyone's life. The humiliation hadn't started in that courtroom. It was the result of a meticulous campaign of devaluation Jessica had orchestrated for months, using every opportunity to reinforce that a woman like Jasmine should never have taken the place of the wife of a successful businessman like Robert. It started subtly. Jessica, newly hired as an executive assistant, made a point of correcting Jasmine in public during company events. "Wow, how interesting your pronunciation of that French word is," she would comment with a fake smile. "It must be difficult when you didn't have access to these things as a child, right?" At company barbecues, Jessica monopolized conversations about expensive wines and international travel, always giving meaningful looks when Jasmine admitted she had never visited certain countries. "Robert deserves someone who can accompany him in these more sophisticated environments," she whispered to other wives, loud enough for Jasmine to hear. The last straw came during the company's anniversary party. Jessica had organized everything, choosing an exclusive country club where Jasmine felt visibly uncomfortable among the predominantly white and elite clientele. During dinner, Jessica stood up to give a speech. "I want to give special thanks to Robert, who has always been so inclusive in his personal choices," she said, pausing strategically. "It's inspiring to see how he embraces diversity, even when it can be socially challenging." The awkward silence that followed was broken only by a few nervous laughs. Jasmine felt all eyes on her, some pitying, others in veiled agreement with the poisonous comment. Robert, who should have defended his wife, just lowered his eyes and fiddled with his napkin. That night in the car, when Jasmine confronted Robert about Jessica's behavior, he exploded. "You're being paranoid. Jessica is professional, competent. Maybe you should learn from her instead of making up intrigues." "Making up intrigues?" Jasmine repeated incredulously. "She practically said in front of everyone that you lowered yourself by marrying me." "That's not what she said, and you know it. You're twisting everything because you're jealous of her education, the way she behaves in society." His words were like a slap in the face. Right then and there, Jasmine realized that the emotional betrayal had begun long before the physical one. Robert had already chosen his side, and it wasn't hers. The following months were a masterclass in psychological humiliation. Jessica began appearing in photos on Robert's social media, always at business events where Jasmine was not present. "Important work meeting," he explained. "Not appropriate for wives." But when Jasmine discovered that Jessica was posting stories from those same events in romantic restaurants with candles and champagne, the lie became crystal clear. She confronted Robert again, this time with screenshots of the posts. "This is work, Jasmine. If you don't trust me, maybe the problem is with you," he replied coldly. "Jessica understands my business world. She speaks 3 languages, has an MBA, knows the right people. Sometimes I need someone who can adequately represent the company." The word "properly" echoed in Jasmine's mind for days. It was confirmation that, in her husband's eyes, she would never be enough. Not because she was incompetent or worthless, but because she carried a mark that he now considered inconvenient for his social aspirations. The situation reached its lowest point during a parent-teacher meeting at the private school where Jasmine worked as an educational coordinator. Jessica accompanied Robert to discuss potential partnerships between the school and his company. During the meeting, Jessica made a point of mentioning her concerns about the quality of teaching. "Not that I'm questioning the coordinator's competence," she said, smiling at Jasmine. "But it might be interesting to bring in outside consultants with more international credentials." The principal, a white woman from a traditional family, seemed to seriously consider the suggestion. Jasmine watched helplessly as Jessica planted seeds of doubt about her professional ability in the very place where she had built a solid career over the years. After the meeting in the parking lot, Robert got straight to the point. "Jessica is right about the school needing to modernize. Maybe it would be better for you to look for something more suited to your profile." "Suited to my profile?" Jasmine repeated, feeling anger rise. "What profile, Robert? Just say it." "You know what I'm talking about," he replied, avoiding her gaze. "Places where you feel more comfortable." At that moment, Jasmine understood she had lost not only her husband, but also the illusion that love could overcome deeply rooted prejudices. Robert wasn't just falling in love with another woman. He was ashamed of his own choice to marry her. But Jessica made a crucial mistake. In her arrogance, she completely underestimated the woman she was trying to destroy. For months, Jasmine had remained silent, not out of weakness, but out of strategy. Every humiliation, every poisonous comment, every look of contempt had been carefully filed away in her memory. Jasmine Williams was not just an educational coordinator. She was a woman who had grown up facing subtle and not-so-subtle prejudice her entire life. She had learned that the best way to deal with discrimination was not direct confrontation was never Jasmine's way. It was meticulous preparation for the right moment to act. And while Robert and Jessica planned their future on the ruins of her marriage, Jasmine was already 3 steps ahead, devising something that would turn their arrogance into their own trap. They thought they knew the game, but they had no idea they were dealing with someone who had spent her entire life learning to play better than her opponents. What they didn't know was that every act of contempt had strengthened something within her that privileged. People could never understand. the quiet determination of someone who had weathered much worse storms and learned that true strength comes not from anger, but from intelligence applied at the right moment. The discovery came unexpectedly during a routine visit to the bank to check joint account statements. Jasmine had noticed strange transactions and decided to investigate personally, taking advantage of the fact that Robert was on yet another of his urgent business trips with Jessica. The manager, Mr. Thompson, a cordial man who had known the couple for years, seemed uncomfortable when she asked about the recent transfers. "Mrs. Williams, it might be best to discuss this with your husband present," he said, avoiding her gaze. "Why? It's my account too," Jasmine replied firmly. "I have a right to know where our money is being spent." After some hesitation, Thompson revealed information that made Jasmine's blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, Robert had transferred more than $200,000 to an account in the name of Jessica Martinez. The mistress had even changed her last name to sound more professional. In addition, he had opened a personal line of credit using the house as collateral, all without Jasmine's knowledge. "There's something else that's troubling," Thompson murmured, lowering his voice. "Your husband was here last week with divorce papers asking about procedures to transfer all assets to his name. He said you had agreed to sign everything." Jasmine felt the world spin. Robert wasn't just planning to get rid of her, he was systematically stealing everything they had built together, laying the groundwork to leave her with nothing. The cruelty ran deeper than she had imagined. That night, when Robert called from Boston to give his usual excuse, Jasmine managed to keep her voice calm. "How's the conference, honey?" "Very productive. I'm learning a lot from the partners here," he replied, unaware that Jessica had posted a photo of them toasting champagne at a romantic Miami restaurant just 2 hours earlier. "That's great, Robert. I'm very proud of you." The silence on the other end of the line was revealing. He hadn't expected support. He had expected confrontation. Her kindness caught him off guard, and for a moment he sounded almost guilty. "Jasmine, we need to talk when I get back." "I know," she replied softly, "and I'm ready for our conversation." But Jasmine's preparation wasn't emotional. It was strategic. The next morning, she sought something she never thought she would need, a lawyer specializing in complex divorces and asset fraud. Dr. Patricia Leon's office was in a skyscraper downtown, and her reputation was legendary. Known for destroying unfaithful husbands in court, she was especially feared by men who tried to hide assets during divorce proceedings. "So, Mrs. Williams," Dr. Leon said after hearing the whole story, her eyes shining with predatory intensity, "your husband thinks he's playing chess, but he's actually playing checkers, and you want to learn the real rules of the game." The lawyer, a 45-year-old Latina who had grown up in a poor neighborhood and graduated from Harvard, understood exactly the kind of prejudice Jasmine faced. "Men like your husband believe that women like us should be content with the crumbs they offer us. They forget that we know hunger better than they do, and that makes us more determined." Dr. Leon's plan was simple and devastating. Jasmine was to continue pretending to be the submissive, broken wife while secretly documenting Robert's every financial move. More importantly, she was to encourage him to accelerate his plans, causing him to make mistakes out of overconfidence. "Arrogant men always hang themselves with their own rope," the lawyer explained. "Our job is just to give them enough rope." In the weeks that followed, Jasmine became a consummate actress. When Robert returned from his business trip, she welcomed him with a special dinner and a calm conversation about the future. "I know we haven't been happy, Robert. Maybe it's time we thought about what's best for both of us." The relief on his face was pathetic. He had prepared himself for an epic battle and found apparent surrender instead. "Jasmine, you're being so mature about this. I always knew you were special." His words were like glass in her throat, but Jasmine smiled sweetly. "I just want you to be happy, Robert. Life is too short to live pretending." Encouraged by his wife's understanding attitude, Robert became careless. He began to talk openly about his plans, thinking he had won the war before it even began. "Jessica is right about a lot of things," he said one night as Jasmine ironed his shirts. "She made me realize that I was limiting myself, settling for a life that no longer represented me." "I see," Jasmine replied, ironing with mechanical calm. "Jessica seems like a very enlightened woman. She is. She has a broader, more sophisticated worldview. And honestly, Jasmine, I think you'd also benefit from a fresh start, finding someone more compatible with your lifestyle. The casual cruelty of those words could have destroyed the woman Jasmine was 6 months earlier. But the woman she had become just smiled and continued ironing while mentally adding another piece of evidence to the dossier she was building. Jessica, for her part, interpreted Jasmine's apparent resignation as total victory. She began showing up at social events where she knew Jasmine would be present, always clinging to Robert's arm, sporting expensive jewelry and designer dresses that clearly cost more than a school coordinator's monthly salary. At a school charity party, Jessica made a point of approaching Jasmine during the intermission. "Jasmine, dear, you seem so serene lately. It must be a relief not to have to pretend anymore, right?" "Pretend what, Jessica?" Jasmine asked calmly, taking a sip of her sparkling water. "Why, that you belong in this world," Jessica laughed, gesturing to the elegant hall. "It must be exhausting trying to fit into places where you clearly don't feel comfortable." "You're right," Jasmine replied, surprising Jessica with her agreement. "It really is exhausting to pretend to be someone we're not." Jessica interpreted the response as an admission of defeat and smiled victoriously. "I'm glad you're finally being honest with yourself. Robert deserves someone who can accompany him in all aspects of his life." What Jessica didn't realize was that every poisonous word, every gesture of superiority, every display of cruelty was being carefully catalogued. Jasmine had learned to turn humiliation into fuel, and each insult only strengthened her resolve. Dr. Leon was impressed by the amount of evidence Jasmine had managed to gather in such a short time. Recorded conversations, where Robert openly discussed the transfer of assets, screenshots of Jessica's social media showing a lifestyle impossible on a secretary's salary, bank statements revealing systematic transfers, and even photos of business trips that were clearly romantic vacations. "You have a talent for this," commented the lawyer, leafing through the dossier. "Many clients come here with a broken heart but no evidence. You came with both a broken heart and the evidence to fix it." The decisive moment came when Robert, drunk with his own arrogance, made the mistake Dr. Leon had been waiting for. During a romantic dinner he thought was private, Jessica filmed him toasting to "our uncomplicated future." In the video, he spoke openly about how he had solved the problem of the division of assets and how they would soon be free to live as they deserve. Jessica, wanting to show off her victory, posted excerpts from the video on her social media with hashtags such as "new chapter" and "life deserve." What she didn't know was that Jasmine had created a fake profile specifically to monitor her posts, and every piece of evidence she voluntarily posted was being archived. "They're handing themselves over," said Dr. Leon, almost incredulous at their stupidity. "It's almost sad how predictable they are." The night before the divorce hearing, Robert came home almost euphoric. "Jasmine, tomorrow will be a new beginning for both of us. You'll see that this decision is the best thing that could happen to us." "I know it is, Robert," she replied, adjusting his tie with the tenderness of a devoted wife. "I'm sure tomorrow will be a day neither of us will ever forget." He interpreted her words as gratitude in advance for his generosity in not making the divorce more complicated than it needed to be. What he didn't know was that Jasmine had spent the previous night reviewing every document, every piece of evidence, every proof that would make the next morning the beginning of the end for him and Jessica. While Robert slept soundly beside her, dreaming of his new life of freedom and privilege, Jasmine lay awake, not with anxiety but with anticipation. For the first time in months, she smiled genuinely, not a smile of submission or resignation, but the smile of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. On that last night as Mrs. Williams, she rose quietly and looked out the bedroom window. The city slept, unaware that in a few hours, a woman who had been systematically humiliated and underestimated would prove that true strength comes not from arrogance or privilege, but from intelligence applied at the right moment. Robert and Jessica thought they knew the rules of the game. What they didn't know was that Jasmine had spent months learning a completely different game, one where patience, strategy, and meticulous documentation trumped arrogance and prejudice. And now, finally, it was time to show them how that game was really played. The expression on Judge Martinez's face changed completely as he reviewed the papers Robert had signed so confidently. His eyebrows furrowed as he read the terms of the agreement, and a heavy silence filled the courtroom.